We're just going to give folks a couple seconds to click on board, and then we're going to get started with the webinar. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alden Landry. I'm the Assistant Dean for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Partnership here at Harvard Medical School. And I'm also an emergency medicine physician at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. On behalf of the Office for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Partnership, I want to welcome you to today's webinar, which is entitled Harvard-Affiliated Dermatology Residency Programs. The mission of the DICP is to advance diversity, inclusion in health, biomedical, behavioral, and STEM fields that builds individual and institutional capacity to achieve excellence, foster innovation, and ensure equity locally, nationally, and globally. Today's program is part of the DICP's Visiting Clerkship program. For over the past 30 years, the Visiting Clerkship program has been a model for excellence, offering outstanding medical students, particularly from groups underrepresented in medicine or historically marginalized in medicine, an opportunity to participate in externships at HMS and its affiliate hospitals. Since its inception, over 1,500 students have completed the Visiting Clerkship program. Each year, we host a series of webinars to bring the members of the HMS residency programs and medical students together to share ideas, provide support, and address questions on the transitions to the next stage of medical training. This webinar provides an opportunity for us to discuss the application process, to address questions from students regarding away rotations, as well as any other concerns that students may have going into the application season. This year's webinars will include neurology, dermatology, otolaryngology, radiology, and urology. The dates for these programs will be listed on a final slide of today's presentations, and you can also find it on our DICP website listed on the bottom of the screen. Just to give you a couple of housekeeping notes, this webinar is being recorded and a copy will be sent to all participants, in addition to being posted on the DICP website. The chat function is off. However, if you do have a question for the audience, please post it in the Q&A session. A short survey will be posted at the end of the webinar, and we would appreciate if you take a brief moment to complete the survey. Now I'm going to transition and introduce our panelists who you really want to hear from as opposed to hearing me in my introductions. I'm going to introduce our panelists one by one, and then we're going to just jump right into questions that I have ready for the panelists, and we'd love to open it up to the rest of the audience for additional questions. So first, I'm going to introduce Dr. Jennifer Wong. She was a board-certified pediatric dermatologist at Boston Children's Hospital, an associate professor of dermatology at Harvard Medical Schools. She serves as section chief of dermatology at Boston Children's Hospital and the program director for the Harvard Combined Dermatology Residency Program. She chairs the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Committee of the Pediatric Dermatology Research Alliance and serves as various diversity committees for her local medical community. Her clinical expertise is pediatric oncodermatology. Dr. Vinood Nambardiri, and forgive me for pronouncing your name incorrectly, is an associate physician in the Department of Dermatology at Brigham and Women's Hospital, an assistant professor in dermatology at Harvard Medical School. He is board certified in internal medicine and dermatology and practices both specialties. His research interests include innovation and technology in medical practice, the clinical workforce, and physician leadership. He currently serves as the Associate Program Director for the Harvard Combined Dermatology Residency Program and previously served as the Program Director for the Transitional Year Residency Program as well. Dr. Nambardiri has authored over 100 peer-reviewed research publications and book chapters and mentors multiple trainees and medical students in the residency level. He received his undergraduate degree from Harvard College, his medical degree from Harvard Medical School, as well as his MBA from Harvard Business School, and completed his residency trainings at Brigham and Women's Hospital in the Combined Dermatology Residency Program. And outside of his clinical responsibilities, he enjoys spending time with his wife and 2 children. And certainly last but not least is Dr. Oyatiwa Oyarinde. She is in her final year of residency at the Harvard Combined Residency Program. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, she went on to Howard University in DC for undergrad and later attended UIC College of Medicine. Upon completing her residency training, she'll be joining Baylor University Department of Dermatology as an assistant professor and director of skin and color in clinic. Outside of medicine, she enjoys writing short stories as well as writing and performing poetry. And I want to say thank you to all of our panelists for being here. And it's really great to see you all in this space. And I'll just turn to you, Jennifer, as program director. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about your program?
Sure. Thank you again, Alden, for having us. I'm really excited to be here today and to share with everyone who's listening on this webinar more about our residency training program. So the Harvard Combined Dermatology Residency Training Program is combined because the reason why we have the word combined in there is because we have multiple institutions as part of our program, and I believe that is one of our biggest strengths. So our residency is affiliated with 6 hospitals, really 7 if you count Dana-Farber. And so our residents rotate through a variety of adult and pediatric hospitals within the Harvard community. We have 30 residents, 30 to 31 residents at any given time. We match anywhere from 8 to 10 dermatology residents every year, and it's a 3-year program. But we also offer, a dermatology residency training program, and we also offer a combined internal medicine and dermatology residency training program. And that program is a 5-year program where you complete an internal medicine residency and a dermatology residency and are board eligible for both upon completion of your training. There's lots that I can say about our program, but I think what I'll just say, because I want to leave a lot of time for lots more questions and to hear from both Vinod and Tewa, is that our primary goal in training our residents is to create leaders in our specialty. People who are really going to go out there and make a difference in our world for all people, all patients, regardless of age and background. And in any capacity, you could be a leader. And so when we think about leaders, we think about academic leaders, people who do research and who teach younger generations of physicians, but we also think about people who are interested in any aspect of healthcare that could make a difference. And so if you're interested in community health and outreach, identifying areas in which we can achieve better equity in dermatologic care, if you really enjoy medical education and teaching, if you enjoy innovation and creating new solutions for dermatology problems, we love it. And we want a diverse group of residents who are out there to really make a difference in the world.
Thank you for that introduction to your program. And I think that's going to be a great kickstart to the conversation we're about to have. So Vinod, I want to turn to you first with our first question. Speaking from a program director's perspective, what are your overall thoughts about this year's application process and how it's going to be different from years prior, especially those that were impacted by the first 2 years of the COVID pandemic?
Great. Thanks so much, Dr. Landry, for having us and for this question to kick us off. I like to think that just like each individual applicant is unique, sort of every season or cycle of the application process also ends up being a unique one. Sometimes there are curveballs that we can't anticipate that will come our way or your way as an applicant. And that's sort of the reality of life that we deal with. But in the anticipation of what's coming up this year, I think right now a lot of program directors and institutions are treading the water to figure out how to approach this year's application cycle, the fall of 2022 into the spring of 2023, as we weigh things like in-person versus hybrid virtual interviews versus on-site experiences. The community of academic dermatology residency program and the leaderships across the country have not yet made a decision on a universal recommendation, as I know some other specialties have. So that's something where the decision is evolving, and depending on when you're watching this session, there may be a determination by that point. But as yet, no final decision has been made, and I think that's something we're all awaiting to determine how exactly to approach this cycle. I anticipate it'll happen in the next month or so, but as of yet, a decision hasn't finally been made. With the uncertainty around COVID surges and things that typically tend to peak in the fall and into the winter, there's a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty around. So I think we're trying to approach this from both the kind of feelings perspective as well as really an evidence-based perspective in the decisions that we're making. One thing that I do anticipate, we are a field that has seen a large number of applicants over the last several years and an increasing trend. I would anticipate that we will still be in a situation where there will be more applicants than there are spaces in the field in dermatology. I don't anticipate that changing. And I think that that's something that as a result, means that gathering information and preparing yourself for the application process, as you are doing right now by watching this webinar, is really advantageous and really a great way to think about the process, several months in advance to prepare yourself well.
So it seems like there's a lot of uncertainty still. And I think that's just where we're at as a country and where we are at as really healthcare providers, physicians, as we are trying to be cautious going into this COVID phase. And so my question for you, Jen, is how are you preparing yourself and everyone involved in the residency process for the application cycle, given all of this uncertainty that we just talked about?
Yeah, well, the good news is we have some practice now. This is our third year of uncertainty. And I think all of us know that we have to be flexible and have to have a plan B. The other good news is that we've learned a lot from conducting virtual interviews and recruitments and have found a lot of positives about it, and imagine that we'll keep many of these changes in place. It helps virtual interviews and virtual recruitment helps all of us, both in terms of time and expense. And so we expect that we'll at least keep components of that to allow for the most flexibility for both the selection committee and our applicants. But as Vinod said, the details of that will be determined over the next couple of months. So in terms of what we're doing to prepare ourselves, we tend to get an early start, usually in the summer, just really talking together as a group and getting feedback from our applicants and from our residents and from our faculty about what went well last year and what we could do better this year. And again, just thinking about, what we'd prefer to do, which I'll just say that I think many of us, not just our own program, but other programs have liked the virtual format. So we probably will lean towards that, but also thinking about, where places we are falling short in terms of recruitment and really giving our applicants a good sense of what a program is like when you can't really visit. And so I think that's an area we're going to focus on this time around, just thinking about how we can give applicants the best sense possible of our program, even if they don't come to visit in person.
Awesome. And Tewa, you mentor a number of medical students who are interested in following in your footsteps and becoming a dermatology resident. We were just mentioning briefly about you going down to SNMA this year. What are some of the biggest concerns that you're hearing from students regarding this upcoming application cycle?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the concerns have changed so much since I was going through it. Like when I was going through it, my biggest concern was financial. And I think that's decreased significantly. There's pros and cons. I think I spent like $10,000 on like just flying around and hotels my year. And I think the numbers are just like very different now. But I think some of the concerns people have is how are they going to get a vibe or a gut feeling about programs virtually? And I definitely think that's tough. I also just went through kind of an application cycle looking for jobs, and it's really hard to virtually get a sense of the program. And then similarly, the reverse of that, how do places get a sense of you if you're not in person? You're a little bit nervous, you're scared your cat might walk in the room and you have to like move the camera, and that might mess up their entire perception of you. And then I think the third thing is the preference signaling that has been added. It's very nerve-wracking for people. They're like, I don't really want to make other programs feel like I don't want to go to their program because I have to preference these number of programs. Like I really want everyone to think I would go there because I would go anywhere. And I do think that these are things to be a little nervous about because as has been said, everything is still kind of in flux. I don't think all the programs even know how they truly want to use the preference signaling yet, or, some of the secondary information, how it truly comes into play. But what I would say is one of the things that's helpful, and I think has been helpful for students over the last few years in terms of getting a vibe for the program and the program getting a vibe for them, is finding ways to talk to the residents, even if it's going to be outside of the interview day, and trying to ask multiple residents similar questions so that you can see like what kind of answers multiple people say. And in person, this was easier because you're at a dinner, pre-interview dinner, you just walk around and ask questions to people. Now you kind of have to do a little bit of shimmying, get email addresses to reach out. And usually in the pre-interview dinners, residents do give their contact information and or say like, hey, please reach out. And I think people are nervous to reach out, so maybe don't. But I think in this virtual era, you actually have to take people up on that offer. If anyone ever offers to talk to you outside of the formal events, I'd say 100% take them up on that, because it's almost impossible besides that to get really great information about how it is to be a resident there. And likewise, when you are in interviews virtually, I think trying really hard, it's so hard because your nerves are, they all get the best of us in interviews, but trying really hard to kind of skip across the nerves and kind of fake it till you make it and be your best self, show up as your best self, and try to, feel, act confident until you feel confident so that people can see your true personality, because it is harder for personality to come through across a screen. So you kind of have to be deliberate about being yourself. And so that sounds probably very, I don't know, nebulous or, kind of high in the sky, but I think some people have found that advice helpful. And, I think as we get more information about, for example, preference signaling and things like that, we'll be able to get better advice about those things.
Well, I think you just dropped a lot of little nuggets in that answer. So I appreciate the scope of the way you answered that question, because there's so many components that many of the students listening to the program may be sort of unsure about. And I think really instilling that confidence in them in the interview phase and being proactive with communications is something that I think a lot of people need to hear. And hopefully that's going to be the impetus for them to reach out to those individuals who offer their contact information. Vinod, we're talking about the Visiting Clerkship program. This is hosted through the Office for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Partnership. And so obviously we're going to stress diversity and inclusion as a part of the discussion today. And so I'd love to hear from you what your thoughts are about what your program is doing to increase diversity and address health equity throughout the program.
Absolutely. I think first, let me just say kind of unequivocally carte blanche, diversity and inclusion and equity are extraordinarily high priorities for our program. I think that's something that particularly under Jen's leadership in her role as a program director has really truly been emphasized and prioritized, and it's not secondary or accessory. It's really front and center of a lot of the things that we do day to day, week to week, month to month in our program. I think the Harvard Dermatology residency program, having seen it as both a trainee and now as a faculty member, it really is committed to upholding the HMS diversity statement that we're committed to convening and nurturing a diverse community of individuals dedicated to promoting excellence and leadership in medicine and science through education, research, and clinical care, as well as service. And I think when you heard Jen mention, right off the bat in terms of what is our program doing and who are we looking for, we are looking for leaders. We're looking for leaders in all fronts of medicine. So whether that's in the clinical arena, the research arena, the educational arena, and diversity is critical to that. So I think our mission is well aligned with what we're trying to do, and we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk as well. So Jen alluded to the fact that we span multiple clinical institutions. Every single one of those 6 major academic teaching hospitals has their own Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and we are plugged in to all of them. So members of our faculty at each individual site are either liaisons or connected with the groups there. So we have this kind of benefit of drawing upon a wealth of offerings and resources from across these multiple institutions to support our trainees and our residents who really can access all of them over the course of their time in training. Specifically, what do we do within the residency? So we have a dedicated diversity committee that's comprised and led by both faculty and residents. And I think that's really important because we have residents in leadership roles on this committee. And it's not something that's top down, it's something that's collaborative. It's something that we really prioritize everyone's input and viewpoint in thinking about diversity in our program. And I think that underscores, why we're so committed to this as a topic. And I also want to say that the committee looks at things beyond a single metric of diversity. So we're constantly looking and exploring, like, what does diversity mean? Does it mean your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, your ethnicity, nationality, immigrant status, etc. And we really do take a holistic view or approach to all aspects of diversity, and we emphasize them. One of the residents and faculty on the diversity committee this year has spearheaded the formation of a URIM directory within dermatology, with the specific purpose of connecting individuals, trainees, and faculty who identify as URIM or in support of URIM individuals to particularly promote activities, mentorship, shared interests that are relevant to individuals in the URIM committee, and particularly in support of our trainees from URIM backgrounds. We're fortunate that we have many faculty members across our institution, and so we're really thankful and generous, who are very generous of their time, and really thankful of that, to have this kind of mentorship network, if you will, that we can grow within our institution. And I don't think we're ever done. That's an ongoing process of cultivation. Another thing, specifically within our program, within dermatology, several of our faculty, myself included, we've hosted visiting clerkships through the visiting clerkship program at Harvard for many years, and have had phenomenal opportunities to connect with individuals as well as mentor them. So kind of work with them in the clinic during the 4 weeks that they're here, but then provide advising, in longitudinal relationships thereafter. And I still keep in touch with folks that I've mentored, even for just a month of time, even after they've gone into residency. And it's been really rewarding. I think a lot of us invest in that, and we're really proud to do so. We've been a part of multiple residency showcases and kind of virtual and in-person events such as this. You also heard Dr. Oyarinde mention how she also represented our program at the SNMA, and I think supporting our trainees in efforts to do outreach is so important. And we really do prioritize and emphasize that. The AAD, the American Academy of Dermatology, also supports a diversity mentorship program, which allows medical students to spend essentially like an elective rotation or a short period of up to 4 weeks of mentorship with a faculty member at a different institution than their own. And I myself have personally overseen this program. It's specifically for URIM individuals. So if you're a trainee who qualifies for this program, it's something to check out, and you can receive a stipend for doing so. And many of our faculty have been supportive and appreciative of these kinds of events. The last thing that I'll say in terms of a programmatic emphasis is we worked with, and I should give all the credit for this to Jen, she worked with Dr. Joan Reed from the Harvard Medical School, who's been a pioneer in diversity and inclusion and kind of community partnership, to build a health equity track within our residency. And that's something that really has blossomed over the last year or so, where we've developed a community of individuals, again, both faculty and residents, who are really passionate about health equity in dermatology, and identifying whether it's resources for performing research or clinical undertakings or community outreach that really promotes health equity. These are some of the things that folks on the ground in our residency program are really dedicated and committed to. I could go on more about this, but I just want to kind of maybe curtail it there and highlight really the work of folks like Jen and Tewa, who go out of their way and passionately mentor individuals to enhance diversity in our program. And I think that really just speaks volumes to the sort of ambassadorial qualities that people at our institution bring to try to emphasize diversity in our field.
Couldn't have said it better. I think it was a great synopsis of all the wonderful things your program is doing. And to be honest with you, your residency program has been one of our strongest partners and allies with the visiting clerkship program and the residency showcase. And I think it shows in the outcomes you have with your trainees that you bring to your programs. Tewa, I want to talk to you really because I know there's maybe a handful of students who are going to be watching this and saying, I'm interested in dermatology, but I'm not sure. And so I would love to hear from you as to, how did you decide dermatology was the right specialty for you? And what tips or recommendations do you have for students who may be on the fence to really be committed to dermatology as a specialty and as a career?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say, I actually went into medical school thinking I wanted to be an OB-GYN. And then I switched from OB-GYN to ortho for a short stint. I know, don't tell anyone, before I landed on dermatology. And I think, with any specialty in medicine, it's hard to get a sense of whether or not you would really want to do it just from hearing people talk about it. I think, I went to a bunch of meetings where people talk about specialties and you get an idea in your mind. It's kind of not until you're kind of boots on the ground either in a elective rotation or shadowing, when you're actually seeing what it looks like day to day. And even when you do that, it's different in different practice settings, right? So you can be with one dermatologist who's doing, kind of skin surgeries, and that's very different from another dermatologist that's focusing on, complex connective tissue disease in a clinic setting, and different from another dermatologist that sees only children. And so I think that's the case for all the specialties. But what I'd say is my biggest advice is trying to get some hands-on experience, whether that be through shadowing, whether that be through one of your research mentors asking them to join them in clinic a few days a week, whether that's through doing an elective rotation. That hands-on experience really cannot be, there's nothing else that can make up for that in terms of making a decision. I got lucky because I did not know what I wanted to do. And even when I took a research year after third year, and at that point, I still didn't know for sure if I wanted to do dermatology, but the NIH research program that I did actually allowed me to pick a lab after I got there. So I didn't commit to doing dermatology research before I got the program. And so I actually did research in a lab that was half dermatology and half pulmonology, studying tuberous sclerosis complex. And it was during that time that I went to shadow peds dermatologists at Hopkins. I got to go to George Washington. I got to go to different programs around. And so with that, my encouragement too is that if at your home institution, you don't have a lot of opportunities to see dermatologists in action, don't hesitate to feel like you can go to another program. Just send people emails and say, hey, I'm a student in the area. Can I come shadow one of your dermatologists? Can I come work with you for just one day? What would that process look like? Don't be afraid to do that, because I think without that experience, it would have been hard for me to know that dermatology was the field for me. And then the last thing that I'll say is that I often hear from mentees that they're unsure about dermatology, not because of the field itself, but because they don't think they're going to match. They don't think they're good enough. People have told them it's so hard to get into derm. And to that, I say, I don't think people should look at it that way. I don't think that you should tell yourself it's so hard to get into dermatology, because then you are the one who is keeping yourself out of a specialty. I think the number one reason why people in general, but definitely why URMs don't match into derm, is because they don't apply, because they're scared that they wouldn't match. I can't tell you how many times I've met people that did another field and they said, I really wanted to do derm, but I knew I wouldn't match, so I didn't do it, or I got advised not to do it. And to that, I say, I think of medicine like a GPS system, right? If you determine where you want to end up, you can end up there, but failures along the way can maybe take you a longer route to get there. But with the right advice, the right hard work and determination, and hard work, not smart, smart work, not just hard work, right? So I think having mentorship is so important to help you get there. I do think that you can match into dermatology. So if you have that mindset that you can, then you're not gonna kind of cut yourself out prematurely because of what people have told you. And to that end, if someone tells you that they don't think you can match, then you shouldn't be taking any further advice from that person. So maybe I think some of the questions later, I can give a few more of my pointers with that, but I think those are the biggest things. Get some experience, shadow some people, do some rotations, make sure you're getting good advice from good mentors who believe in you, and don't, shut yourself out before it's time.
Again, great points. Thank you for all that you said. You almost had me thinking I need to go back and reconsider my residency selection. Jen, I want to ask you a question. I maybe change it up from what I was originally planning to ask. We talk about OA rotations as a way for students to learn about programs. It's the season for OA rotations. We have a handful of students that are coming. We have students who wanted to come but aren't able to do so. Can you talk about the value of OA rotations, especially for those who haven't been able to get one on the record, and how that can help or hurt your application? And then also for students who aren't able to do OA rotations, what can they do to learn more about a program?
Sure, yeah. So first, I'm just going to say, do not worry. If you didn't get the OA rotation of your choice or your preference, that does not eliminate you by any means from consideration into a program. And in fact, I'll say at our program, we love having students come and being interested in our program. Tewa was a student who rotated with us, but that is not something that necessarily gives an advantage to one student over another. We really do, we realize, and I think many programs realize, that there are only so many people who can come rotate, both because of space limitations and also financial limitations. And so please don't worry. But on the note of both whether you do an away or you cannot do away, how do you get to learn about the program, and how do you maybe also have them learn more about you? I think just to go off of Tawa's theme of mentorship, I think mentorship and sponsorship is the key to success. And identifying, so if you're doing an away, identifying a faculty and residents who you connect with, who seem interested in talking to you and working with you. Just really take that opportunity to build a relationship, and ask to meet with them outside of clinic, just to get their advice, and not maybe about applying into dermatology, but also ask about their careers, why they chose dermatology, why they chose to come here as a faculty member or as a resident. I think those kinds of conversations will give you the best sense of what a program is like, what the culture is like, why people are there, and whether that connects with you. And I think in addition, asking those questions shows those people you're talking to that you're truly and genuinely interested in the program, because you want to know about them personally and the reasons why they're there. And then if you aren't able to do an away elective in a program that you're interested in, still reach out. And again, I think that it's helpful to talk to a program director, but it's even more helpful to talk to the residents who are in the program. And I say residents with an S because you want to get multiple perspectives. And ask them. I like Tawa's idea of asking similar questions to different people. So if you are to choose 5 or 6 programs you're really interested in that you can't rotate at, you can email the program director or program coordinator or any faculty member you're connected with and just say, are there maybe 2 or 3 residents you would suggest that I talk to? And ask similar questions to all of these residents at all these different programs, and just get a sense of why they're there and whether that means something to you. And then the last thing I'll say in terms of how to figure out, you may be thinking like, how am I going to figure out what the 5 or 6 programs she just said to reach out to are? Going back to the theme of mentorship and sponsorship, think about why you're going into dermatology. And while you're not committed to whatever it is you've decided you want to do, that gives you a sense of what you might want to learn more about and what you want to be mentored on when you're in the program. And look through the various websites and look to see if there are faculty who specialize in the area you're interested in, how many faculty there are that are interested in that. That'll give you a sense of how many potential mentors and sponsors you may have in that program. And reach out to them. Don't be scared. Just send them cold emails. It's fine. The worst thing they can do is not respond. And then you can even email them again. It's okay. But reach out to them and see if they'll talk to you. And also that'll give you a sense of how much support you might have when you go to that program, or if you go to that program, for the interest that you have.
Awesome. And Vanud, any additional thoughts? Your co-panelists have offered some great thoughts along this. And my next question for you is going to be similar to the answers that we've just heard. But any closing thoughts on the importance of reaching out sort of before the interviews happen?
Yeah, I think that was a great summary. One thought or point I might add is, if you're interested in a specific area of work or clinical or research within a field, if there are faculty members who pursue that work at a particular institution, it can be a great way to connect on a shared interest. And reach out to them. Maybe you've read their papers or you've heard them give a talk somewhere, and having that sort of shared interest connection can be really powerful in forming those kinds of mentorship relationships. And so that's the only other piece of food for thought I'd put out there.
Awesome. And Tewa, just to wrap up this part of the discussion, oftentimes, and I think you alluded to this earlier, students don't apply because they don't think they're going to get in. Oftentimes, students may be coming from smaller institutions and they don't have the same national recognition or reputation. And so they are afraid to apply to a big, name program like yours. And so what are your thoughts on how students can really overcome those barriers, whether it be internal barriers where they just don't apply, or maybe some of the perceived barriers that they may be hearing from other individuals at their institution when they don't apply to or they don't reach out to a broad network of potential residency programs?
Yeah, I can't overstate what Jen was saying earlier, that, you know, don't be afraid of cold emailing people at a different place, right? Because like she said, the worst case scenario is that they don't respond, right? I think if you're cold emailing something that is 5 paragraphs long, or something that is like, you know, rude in a way, or maybe asking for too much. I have seen students send emails saying, you know, can you please be my mentor and meet with me monthly, on an initial email, right? If you're sending those kinds of emails, then let's talk about, you know, how to maybe change our emails a little bit to be more successful. But in general, the idea of, you know, when I think about someone who comes from a program that a med school that maybe doesn't have a dermatology program at all, right? I think people often think of that as a disadvantage, but I often tell them, switch it around and think about it as an advantage, right? Because it's an opportunity for you to realize that you're going to have to reach out to people at other places, right? Sometimes when people come from a place that has a big derm program, they don't think at all about reaching out outside of their home program. And if they don't end up getting into their home program, they have no connections outside of their program. Whereas if you think of it the right way, coming from a place without a derm program, you understand how important it is for you to reach out to multiple people. And it kind of is a numbers game, because you're not going to get a response from everyone you reach out to. People are so busy, they're mentoring other people. But I do think that trying to find mentors, sponsors, advisors, and they're all different things, right? Advisors is anyone that gives you any advice or talks to you at all, really can be an advisor to you. A mentor is probably someone who, you know, who is going to spend a little bit more time talking to you. And by the way, I never really advise people to ask for a mentor specifically on the first email unless it's required for some program to put that on a sheet of paper or something. But generally speaking, just kind of have a smaller ask, what you want to talk about, what question you have, a project you want, you know, more input on. And then the mentorship comes organically over time. And then I think sponsors are people who, you know, they're much more rare to find. They typically might be a research mentor you had that really, you had a great relationship, and then they become closer to you and say, hey, I'm taking it on as a responsibility to get this person into, you know, into a dermatology program. And those are just 3 different levels of people that you're going to network with over your time as a medical student that will end up being helpful to you in the future. And these are 3 different levels that you'll be able to give back, right? When you become a dermatologist to different, you know, you won't have the bandwidth to be everyone's sponsor, but you might have the bandwidth to be someone's advisor or mentor. And so just thinking about those things and just empowering yourself that you can get advising, you can get mentorship, and you can get sponsorship. It might just not be where you're at. So I'd say that's probably what I'd say to that question.
Awesome. And Jen, one of the things that's important for students, especially those who may be in their earlier stages of medical school, is thinking about lining up the right rotations prior to applying for residency. What should students ensure that they have as far as the right rotations on their application before applying to residency?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things to consider. One is just the requirements of a training program. I would look very carefully, do your homework, and look carefully on each program's website to make sure that you're fulfilling the requirements that they ask for, whether that's the kind of rotation that you should have done, or you know, having taken the step 1 exam, or step 2. Some programs do ask for that. So again, just do your homework and look at the websites and look at requirements. And I would just say on that point, I know we're talking about dermatology, but preliminary programs tend to have more requirements around that in terms of like what sub-internship you should have done. And you'd hate to apply to a program and not have done the sub-internship they've required. And I'm specifically thinking about people who may be interested in a pediatric prelim year, which you can do in dermatology. And some of those programs may require that you do a pediatric sub-I. So again, just look carefully at the requirements. And that's an easy thing to do. You just need to take the time to do it. But the other consideration is, what rotations do I need to do so that I have the letters of recommendation that can attest to the skills that these programs are looking for? It is really important to have people speak to your clinical skills. Even better if it's in dermatology. And so if you are someone who does not have a dermatology home program, you should make an effort to do at least one rotation that's specific to dermatology, even if it's not in your program. And your school should help you with that. I don't think you need to do 5 away programs or five away rotations, but if you can do 1 to 2 and have people and work really closely with a couple of people who can write strong letters for you attesting to your clinical skills and also your bedside manner, your ability to relate to patients, counsel patients, interact with the team. Those are the things that we're looking for in the letters of recommendation. And those would be the reasons to do a rotation. But, as far as I know, there's not really a minimum requirement of clinical rotations other than having at least done 1 in dermatology. But I think if I were in a program that did not have a home program, I would try to do, if you can, do 2, just so you can get a diversity of letters.
And Vinood, Jen alluded to this in her answer, but when you're looking at a student, whether they be rotating with us on an away rotation as part of the visiting clerkship program, or you're reading their evaluations from rotations that they've done either in their 3rd-year clerkships or even during their 4th-year experiences, what are you looking for to assess their clinical acumen and how they've done on those rotations?
Yeah, absolutely. No matter where you go, no matter what program you train in the country, residency is primarily a clinical experience, right? You're going into this field for the next 3-4 years to immerse yourself in taking really good care of patients and then coming out the back end as a clinician ready to tackle whatever it is that you want to do. You can do other things like teach and research, et cetera, but you really need to have that fundamental core aspect of your training, which is built around the taking good care of patients. So I think demonstrating that medical knowledge in the field and what you do to demonstrate your interest in the field is really powerful. It shows that you're committed to this as a trajectory for the rest of your career, and then also those skills that speak to your ability to connect with patients, to communicate with them, to take good care of them, to make decisions. We're not expecting someone who's rotating as a 3rd or 4th-year medical student to have amassed the entire knowledge of dermatology that one would need to go out and practice independently. But do they show compassion? Do they show dedication to their patients and take really good care of them and show the willingness, the interest to amass that medical knowledge as they go is really powerful. I think that comes across in a couple of ways in an application. One, we do look at, how did you perform on the clerkship? Is there a grade? If there is, we will look at it. A lot of schools are pass-fail, even during their clinical rotation. So we'd love to see a pass in that category. And then if your school has other increments or divisions, we'll take a look at that in the context of the transcript, and every med school sends along how to interpret their grades. So we do pay attention to your performance, particularly in dermatology, but really across all of your clinical rotations. I would be wary of someone who performed phenomenally in dermatology but had failed every other rotation. To me, that would be a red flag. We're a field that integrates almost every other clinical discipline, whether it's internal medicine or surgical or pediatric or OB or psych, or really any spectrum of disease, there's probably overlap with dermatology. And so we like to look for folks who are well-roundedly performing in a bunch of different areas, and that speaks to sort of your ability to integrate knowledge and to thrive in multiple different settings. Our program in particular, as we said, we draw on multiple institutions, and so folks who can thrive in different settings are probably ones who will thrive in a program like ours. So I'd say those are some of the things that we look at, and if you have the opportunity to do more than one dermatology rotation, I think 1 or 2 is fine. I agree with Jen. I would not spend your entire 4th year lining up back-to-back 7 dermatology rotations. That also, to me, would actually be a red flag as someone who I would question some of their decision-making abilities.
Yeah, that seems like a lot. So I'm pretty sure you're going to have a good answer for this one, but letters of recommendation. How can students secure a strong letter of recommendation? What should they do to help the letter writer in preparation, and who should they ask?
Yeah, no, I love talking about this. I think in terms of who to ask, I'll talk about that first and then how to get the letter. So, one, it's going to be anyone who knows you well clinically or with research. So, your mom's best friend or people like that are not going to apply here. So, mainly just, people that you work with on your clinical rotations or people that you did research with. And then further to that, to break it down, let's say that you're on a rotation. It might not only be your derm rotation, like we talked about. You might get letters from your internal medicine rotation or surgical rotation or peds rotation, especially if you want to go into peds derm. When you start the rotation, you want to level set with the person you're working with and ask them about their expectations for the medical student. Let's say it's a month-long rotation. Day one, you're asking them, hi, I'm excited to work with you. Please tell me your expectations for me on this rotation and what would an excellent medical student look like on this rotation. And then halfway through the rotation, you want to check in, schedule a meeting to talk about how you've been performing and really, ask them, please be honest with me. How have I been performing? Have I been meeting or exceeding expectations? If they give you some advice on how to improve, which they should, because none of us are attending level at that time, when they give you that advice, you say, okay, great, I'm going to take that advice. Thank you for your advice. And if I were to, exceed expectations or to fulfill all these, what you just mentioned, would you feel comfortable writing me a strong letter of recommendation, and seeing kind of how they feel, because they've had 2 weeks with you at this point. If they're enthusiastically responding and saying, oh my gosh, absolutely, I would love to, you're already amazing, then that's a good sign. If they're like, I'm not really sure, but we'll see. You can't take that back what you already asked for, but you just keep that in mind, right? And unless they come back and say at the end of the rotation, wow, you've just blown me away, I would love to write you a strong letter, you just know that that letter might not be as strong. And even if they write you a letter, you might not actually submit that anywhere. But the people who you ask for a letter, and even if you don't do it the way I just mentioned, if you wait till the end of the rotation and then ask, I still recommend asking very specifically for a strong letter of recommendation. And if you can ask this in person or on Zoom so that you can actually see their body language as they answer that question, to make sure that you believe them when they say this, because unfortunately, not everyone is honest about that. Some people will agree to write you a letter and it won't be a strong one. I think that's like the most unfortunate thing whenever I see those letters, and I think it's very unfair to the students. Another thing is that students often think, oh, I should just get a letter from the most famous doctor that I know at my program, or the person who's like the biggest in the field of dermatology. And I think that unless that is also a person that knows you well, can speak to your clinical acumen, can speak to your personality, and even throw in some personal anecdotes, that's not going to be a good letter. Just because they're famous doesn't mean that they're going to be able to write you a good letter. And often means that they won't unless they really know you well, because they might be getting asked by a lot of students to write letters, or in general, they just don't know you. So definitely picking people who know you well and who can speak strongly of you over people who are popular in the field. And then lastly, I'd say if you do a significant research experience and don't ask for a letter from that person, that might look poorly on you, because it might seem that, okay, something bad must have happened for you to have spent a year with this person or 3 months in this person's lab, and for some reason they don't know you well enough to write a letter. So I would really try to make sure that you get letters from your research mentors if you spend a lot of time as well.
Again, lots of great nuggets in there. Recognizing we're coming up on time, we may need to speed up just with our questions just to make sure we get through everything. Jen, another important component of the application is the personal statement. What should students be putting into their personal statement? What makes for a good personal statement? And should we be talking about COVID in personal statements?
Yeah, I love reading personal statements. And I think it gives me a sense of who the applicant is. And so to keep it brief, I would say the 3 points or the 3 considerations an applicant should have as they're writing their personal statement is, 1, to share a personal story. It can be as intimate or as, maybe just anecdotal as you want it to be, but remember that whatever you share will be a topic of conversation for an interview. So share something personal. Number 2, summarize your accomplishments, summarize your application, because it's very hard for us to put everything together because you guys have a lot of accomplishments. And so it's hard to see like what is meaningful to you. Why did you do all these things? Is there a theme across? So summarize, not just by listing, but really by describing why you decided to pursue these different activities and what you're proudest of and whether there's a theme there. Just bring it all together for us. And then number 3, show your passion. Ideally, you're passionate about dermatology, but it's not just dermatology. There must be some aspect of dermatology that gets you really excited, why you decided to apply into this field. And so show that through your application. So again, 3 things: share something personal, summarize your application with a thematic, with something thematic, and then lastly, show your passion for the field.
Great. Make it personal, make it a statement, as the name says. Thank you for that. Vinood, there's a lot of angst going on right now across residencies in general, maybe more specific to dermatology, depending on how much is valued by each individual program, with step 1 going pass fail. Any thoughts on what students should be thinking and how programs are going to be preparing for, a transition from, scored exams to pass fail when it comes to step 1?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. We have a longstanding policy in our program of not using a specific step 1 score cutoff as part of our application review process. So from our standpoint, I actually don't think it's going to change the way we approach applicants at our specific dermatology program very much, if at all. I think nationally, as this discussion is evolving, right now we're in a transition period. As you said, some people may have a score, some people might not have a score. I think to be fair to all applicants, there will be sort of a level playing field of thinking about it as a pass-fail exam. And I think what that means is more programs will shift towards this holistic review process if they have not already espoused that, but looking at sort of the application in its broad entirety and not putting as much emphasis on a single piece of information as a filter or as a threshold cutoff going forward. So I think that's how it's going to play out in dermatology.
And Jen, when it comes to step 2, should students have it done before they apply, or is it okay to have it come in later in during the application cycle?
Yeah, this is a really tough question. Before step 1 became pass fail, I would have just said, don't worry about not having taken step 2, but I do think some programs are now looking at step 2 because step 1 is pass fail, and I'd hate for somebody to not be considered at all because they haven't taken step 2. And I do know some programs are going to require a step 2 score. So right now, until things change, hopefully for the better, and just allow for a pass fail step 1 without requiring a step 2, my advice to students would be to take the step 2 test before applying. For those who didn't and it's too late, don't worry. It shouldn't be. It's not required by the ABD or the ACGME or anything like that. I think the majority of programs will not require it. It's just a small number that may.
And Vinood, can you just tell us what's going on when it comes to supplemental applications specific to dermatology, and any sort of high-level thoughts that students should be using to approach these applications, and maybe also what residency programs are going to be using when it comes to these supplemental applications?
Yeah, dermatology was one of the 3 specialties that piloted the ERIS supplemental application during the 21-22 application cycle. So we have a year's worth of experience under our belt already in the field. I think looking at the supplemental application is it's really an opportunity for applicants to showcase kind of an additional layer or an additional component of themselves throughout the application. You can be thoughtful in thinking about what are the 5 most meaningful experiences that you have that want to highlight who you are. I don't think you should be trying to strategize or game the supplemental application. I think you really want to try to put out what it is that you value, and that allows the programs to kind of assess their alignment with your values, and ultimately that's what you should be hoping for as well. So that's the advice that I give applicants, and I also emphasize that supplemental means that it is not the main application, so you should not be spending a disproportionate amount of your time trying to think about the supplemental application, but really focus your efforts on the main ERIS application and pay some attention to the supplemental thereafter. So that would be the advice that I would give applicants thinking about supplemental this coming season for dermatology. And I'd say most programs are still learning how exactly they incorporate that into their selection process. We've only had 1 year of experience with it thus far. And I can say from my own personal experience, I'm still learning exactly how to integrate it alongside everything else that applicants provide us.
And Jen, Vanu alluded to this earlier. Thoughts for the interview process, virtual, in person. Where are you leaning? You seem to, have some thoughts about this as well. Would love to hear, when a decision may be potentially made for dermatology as a specialty.
Yeah, I don't know if there will be a rule around virtual versus in person across our specialty. But I will say, as I mentioned earlier, that the majority of programs seem to have really liked having virtual interviews and see how that can level the playing field as well. And so I do think the majority of programs will at least offer virtual, if not just require it. And I think that is where our program is as well. I don't want to make a definitive decision on this webinar that's permanent that everyone will watch, but I have really liked the virtual interviews and hope at least that we can keep it as an option, if not all of it.
Awesome. And Tim, well, aside from not having your cat walk around in your background, any thoughts on how people can prepare for virtual interviews?
Yeah, I'll just give some of my rapid fire tips. So one, mock interviews, mock interviews, mock interviews. Get on Zoom or something with your friends, have them talk to you about what your tics are that you don't even notice. If you're tapping your face all the time or doing something, it just, it's really good to have those mock interviews. Second, neutral background. Anything that's in your background can be called into question. So your politics, if you have a political poster, I'd say that's not a good idea for your background and things like that. Plants usually are safe. Things like that. No background noise as much as possible. So having a mic or something like this is helpful, especially if you live on a busy street. No swivel chair as much as possible. Get a stationary chair. People also don't realize that when they're nervous, they swing back and forth on these kind of swivel chairs. So stationary chair. Lighting is really important. So in front of a window directly or get a ring light. Test your internet connection. My favorite website to test it is speedtest.net, and they will tell you whether or not you have a good connection or not. And if you don't, you might need to consider going to a library and renting a room or to a friend's house. And really communicate with your interviewer. If you're having connectivity issues while you're in the interview, just be upfront about it. Don't try to hide it, because if it cuts out, then you might not know what the contingency plan might be. So that's really important. Wear your full outfit head to toe. If you have to jump out because the cat does get in the room, you don't want the boxer showing. And then I'd say go with the flow as much as possible, because things will happen that you did not plan for, and you just don't want to seem too disheveled if something happens. That's also a point of learning for the program about you. If things go wrong, how you manage it in the moment. So try to go with the flow.
Dr. Oyarinde, with all the tips and pearls in her answers, I love it. I recognize we're towards the end of time, and I just want to ask very quickly and maybe change up the questions that I had. Jen, how do you deal with post communication from trainees? And do you interact with trainees after the interview? Post interview conversations with applicants, not trainees. And should students expect an email? Can they email? How do you deal with those?
Yeah. We have done different things every year, but we do communicate with applicants just to thank them for coming and to welcome them to ask us questions. And we also welcome students or applicants to communicate with us if they have any questions about our program. If they'd like to express interest in our program, that's fine. It's always nice to hear, but it does not play a role in our ranking process. We actually make the rank list right after the interviews, and then it's set. And so so it's up to the applicant, but mostly we are very happy to talk to any applicant that has any question about our program or wants to talk to additional people as they're making the very hard decision about where they want to train in their specialty. And so that would be the primary purpose of communication.
And Vinood, any thoughts about your trainees and what you learned from them over the past couple of years, and how they handled the pandemic, and how the institutions handled the pandemic as well?
Yeah, I think it's been a growing process for all of us. The thing that I think we've taken away most often is the need for flexibility. And I've been really proud of our residents to be able to deal with policies or procedures that were changing, week to week, sometimes day to day, in a time of great uncertainty. And so this concept of being able to adapt, be flexible, has really shown a ton of maturity and responsibility on behalf of our residents, for which I'm very appreciative and have tremendous respect for.
And Taylor, any parting advice for people listening to this? Any last minute information, with all the pearls that you've given? I would love to hear if there's anything else you have to offer for students.
No, I think the main thing is just restating what I said earlier about believing that you can. If you are passionate about it and you really want to do it, it breaks my heart when I hear about people who, kept themselves out of the things that they wanted to do, especially dermatology. There were multiple people along my journey that told me that I should not do dermatology, that I would not be able to do dermatology. And even during my research year, very well-intending people, when I mentioned that I was going to do an away rotation at the Harvard program, told me, do not waste your time doing it away there. They're never gonna accept you. And so to be finishing residency and had the honor to have been chief resident this last year. And, I just feel very grateful and proud of myself, but also thankful that I did not listen to the multitude of people who told me that there's no way I could have gotten here. And even now, as I was applying for jobs, people were telling me what I couldn't do. And I've learned over time not to listen to those voices. And so I really urge you, if you learn that earlier, you will definitely be able to have, success beyond your wildest dreams. So really proud of you all for being here, and good luck. You're going to do amazing.
And shameless plug, shout out to the Visiting Clerkship program for getting you up here to Boston. I want to say thank you to Dr. Wong, Dr. Uyarinde, and Dr. Namadiri for being here with us. There's a brief survey that we'd ask that you fill out. Also, just to keep in mind for students who may be interested in other specialties, June 7th will be our otolaryngology webinar. June 21st will be radiology, and we'll be wrapping it up with an event on the 28th to talk about urology. We also will have some other events coming up on the schedule. I believe we're going to have a conversation on supplemental application sometime in August, given the interest that students are having in that area, and making sure that they are well resourced there, as well as a residency showcase, which will be on September 10th. And hopefully we'll be able to do it in person here in Boston. So again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to Lynn for being in the background to help pull this together. And I hope everyone has a good rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you so much for having us.
Bye-bye.